All right. All right. Dennis, you ready to rock and roll?
Let's go.
All right. I am going to share my screen here. It's good to see everyone. Now, couple housekeeping notes before we start. This session has so much stuff in it. It's so jam-packed with stuff about sync. Some that's review, some that's new stuff. That we really encourage folks to put your questions in the chat, and we've got a lot of SCs on the call who can answer it live as we're going through. I'm also going to keep my eyes both on the comments as well as on the chat too, in case there's anything that we want to call out. But we're talking about sync, and we're talking about all of sync today. So before we get started, just kind of a quick just overview statement. What is Sync? For those that are familiar, this is a little bit remedial. For those that are new, Sync is our management platform. And when we say the entirety of the workplace and workspace, we truly mean that. We're going to talk about everything from booking to insights to devices to personal devices to now support, ticketing, contract licenses. All of that is now within Sync. There's a lot of stuff in there, which is why actually Dennis and I had a little bit of a hard time figuring out how we were going to curate today's session because there's so much stuff to cover. But Dennis, first question before we jump in. When you're introducing or talking about Sync to customers, how do you position it? How do you pitch it?
Yeah, so every customer looks at it a little bit differently, but mainly Sync is designed to help you with all your Logitech devices, be it configuring them, maintaining them, monitoring, etc. And we'll show you a lot of that today.
So where we're going to start is we're going to start with devices first. And the way that we're going to, Dennis and I are going to do this is we're going to have three big sections today. We're going to talk about devices first. I'm then going to talk about, and then we're going to do a little bit of a screen share demo. And then we're going to talk about insights. We're going to do a screen share demo. And then we're going to talk about Product Hub and support, and then do a screen share demo. So a little bit of kind of tutorial, a little bit of education, and then a little bit of a demo. So starting with devices first. This is a bit of a review because this has kind of been core functionality to Sync for some time. But generally speaking, you're going to be able to look at your room devices. You're going to be able to see them in lists. You're going to be able to see dots, red dots, blue dots, orange dots that tell you when devices are online, offline, if there's problems, if there need to be updates, etc. You're going to be able to see dashboards, lists, room logs, etc. You're even going to be able to, for CollabOS network devices, remote UI into those devices to troubleshoot as well. And again, Dennis is going to do a demo of that in just a few minutes. But in addition to the room management side, we also have update channels. So one of the things that we love about Sync is the ability for people to group devices, declare the version of CollabOS that they want for those devices. And this really allows for control of their entire operation, of their entire fleet. So Dennis is going to show this, but imagine that we've got rooms that are executive rooms, and we want to make sure that those are on a stable CollabOS build. But maybe I've got a couple lab rooms that are by my office where I want to be able to test devices. I might put those on a beta update channel. And so again, what update channels do is they allow us to control that so that that validation and cascade process can be flexible according to the way that our IT team operates. We can also view personal devices within Sync as well. So the dashboard that you're looking at shows us the breadth of personal devices that we have deployed across our organization. And we can also control the available firmware for those devices. So as new firmware becomes available, we can push that. Well, it's not pushing that it updates for them, but we can make it available for people to use Tune and then upgrade their personal devices. And so with every section here, I'm going to spend, like I just did right there, 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the review. And I'm going to spend more of the time talking about what's new because we know that with Talk Techie to Me, we've covered Sync before. So we want to make sure that we're talking about really the new stuff that's come out over the last year. So what is new? There are new features that have made management even more flexible and better within the Sync platform. One of the first ones is this idea of mute meeting rooms. And when we say mute, we don't mean that the room itself, like we're muting the audio, right, Dennis? It means that we're muting the room in dashboards. We're muting the room from alerts. So again, we're going to show this live, but an example that I like to give is that I have about 7 rooms in our Irvine office where I want to make sure that I don't get alerts when those rooms are online or offline, because all I'm doing is testing in those lab rooms. And so by muting those rooms, it doesn't affect my health percentage score. It doesn't send me erroneous alerts where I'm saying like, oh, that's right, there's another room offline. Oh, it's just my lab room. Again, I can exclude that from those alerts. Another feature that came to Sync this year was we had a lot of requests for how rooms are filtered and organized. So a lot of people love groups, and you're seeing this here on the left. We've organized this by AMR. I've got Irvine, and then within Irvine, I've got a lab space and a main space. But I may also want to subdivide within those subgroups more. So maybe I have certain rooms that are Zoom appliance rooms and certain rooms that are Zoom rooms on Windows or Mac OS. If I want to filter or sort by that, I can now do custom tags within Sync. And so Dennis and I are going to show a bunch of different examples on how tags might work to do organization. And then finally, something that's especially important for large organizations, when you're seeing a room and you're saying, Palmetto, what is that room again? What is that room again? Well, including a room image allows you to quickly identify exactly what room it is, number one. And then number two, Dennis is also going to show in our live demo that's coming next, some other kind of really cool features that you can put into room images that really help your IT team. Okay, so Dennis, that's our overview, enough slideware. Let's jump over to your screen and talk through some of the features that we just saw, but here in a live demo. So what are we looking at here?
Perfect. So here's our dashboard. And I'm going to preface this. You're seeing the SE tenant. So a lot of these devices are unplugged or not updated, things like that. So 35% healthy room is not something we strive for, but you're seeing the inner workings of how the SEs run their labs. On here, I'm seeing, of course, room status. I can see issues, what devices. I can see we have 17 rally boards already put in the SE tenant. I can see different devices. I can go down and look at 30 days of issues and occupancy. So a lot of different things at a high level. The good part, I can also look at smaller groups, maybe my lab personally and things like that.
Now, one of the other dashboards that I like to look at is in the inventory section. And for me personally, whenever I start my day, this is typically the list that I look at for Irvine. But let's take a look at South Carolina here. So as we can see on the left, we've got our all groups, we've got AMR, and then we've got Dennis's lab. And then within Dennis's lab, we've got South Carolina. So we've got groups and subgroups. But Dennis, what are we looking at here?
So we're looking at devices in, let's say, my building, and I'm able to see what the device is, the names, different contract info, if there's an update available, and also the health in these issues. I see I've got 2 rooms with errors. We probably need to look at that at some point. But Craig also mentioned tags. So when you're setting your room names, there's specific, standards you want to set up for your rooms to keep those going. But I use tags, so instead of searching for everywhere, I may have rooms in different buildings, things like that. I put a Dennis tag on there. Craig happened to have a device in my area, so we put a Craig tag. Different Zoom, Teams, MTR, so lots of different things we can do with tags.
So I think the idea here is really about flexibility, right? So I think the call out is that we want to make sure that teams are using Sync in a way that matches the function for their team. So Dennis gave a great example. Let's imagine for these 5 really small offices here. I don't know why there's 2 of us managing only these 5 rooms. You probably don't need 2 of us. But let's imagine that was the case. Dennis has to manage half of the rooms. I have to manage half the rooms. Tags makes it incredibly simple to be able to just filter and say like, okay, which rooms are mine? Which rooms are Dennis's rooms? We're seeing that right here. That's one way of operation. But again, depending on how your team functions, you can create a tag based on what that functionality looks like so that your team can, again, filter and sort based on a different set of organization criteria. Now, another thing that I'm looking at here, Dennis, is I'm seeing the ability to mute rooms right here. Let's talk about that a bit right in this live demo.
Yeah, so the nice thing about mute rooms, you're not muting audio or anything like that. You're suppressing the instances going to the dashboard. So my office room, I've taken it offline. So instead of getting error reports and all like that, I'm going to go ahead and mute this room. So I can easily click on one or multiple devices, and now I click mute rooms. It's going to give me the ability to mute this indefinitely, or I'm just going to go ahead and say for next week, because by next week, I hope to have this room back online. And in a second, you'll see a nice little icon showing that this room is now muted.
Very, very cool, right? And so we're seeing the icon here next to the name of the room. Let's go ahead and click into one of these rooms. I want to talk a little bit more about the specific features related to rooms that we were talking about before. Okay, so I'm seeing the room page. Dennis, what are we looking at here? What are some of the callouts?
So the nice part here, I can see activity in the room, what's been done recently. I happen to notice, hey, there's a mic pod that was disconnected. We could go and troubleshoot that in a few minutes. But another part customers have been asking for is more information about the room other than just text and names. So something like the room image. So I can click here. I can see this is what this room looks like. I've got a Samsung monitor, a rally bar, all like that. But maybe I need a little bit more detail. Customers have asked for adding wiring diagrams, maybe specific devices, maybe the back of the device, how things are plugged in. And all this is customizable for you. The other area is writing information, who to contact if this room's down, who in that building is the person to go to, all like that. And then later on, we'll talk about this update channel section.
So one of our viewers, Heath, made a comment, said tags and images will make things much easier to navigate and find. Yes, that was the idea. The funny part is that even for again, I generally have a much smaller office, not nearly 100 rooms or a couple hundred rooms, generally smaller office located in Southern California. And even then, we find room images to be incredibly helpful because sometimes the room names change. Like we do concert venues for all of our rooms, so like Coachella and Glastonbury and all that. And then recently we decided to kind of retire two of the old names and then put some new names in. And I was confusing those two rooms over and over and over again. So even now, with an office that small, room images has been pretty helpful. Dennis, we've looked at the room log, right? That's typically step two, right? So typically what I'll do is I'll look at the inventory list. I'll look at the dots, see what colors they are. I'll click in, look at the room log to see what the problem is. But let's imagine from there, it's like, okay, I see that maybe it's not a mic pod disconnected. Maybe there's something else here. I need to be able to do more troubleshooting, maybe get hands-on with the device without actually having to physically be there. Let's talk about remote UI access here.
Okay, and while I'm doing that, I am actually going to fix the mic pod physically, but let's go in. I can see there's something in here, but to Craig's point, I need to try to be in that room without physically being there. So I easily click on my remote UI access. In the room, there's an audible tone and also red bars around the displays. So I can see what's on the screens. But what if I actually wanted to interact with the room or go to specific settings? Nice part, I can click on the tab here. And, Craig, you want to see if we can make a call?
Let's
I
do
could
it.
go to my settings, but let's go ahead and make a call. So I'm interacting live with this room. You see our camera's going to come in. Got a nice, someone's put a bag over the camera. So we know definitely, we'll want to go and take care of that when we get back. But while I'm in here, much like Davis did earlier, turning on the site, I could go in and change camera settings. I could mute, but I can also up here say I want to get into the settings. So we've all seen with our Teams rooms and Zoom rooms, sometimes there's a couple clicks to get to the CollabOS settings. So Logitech, we've taken a few of those clicks out, and I could click on Open Settings right here. So now I go right to my CollabOS settings, could log in with my super secret password, and now I'm in my CollabOS settings. So a single click, being able to go in there. Maybe I need to do an update or check some connectivity, things like that. But Craig, there's also other things. Why don't you talk about maybe how we could deploy this with a rally board or something like that using this technology?
I think, when we think about remote UI, I think even for myself, when we were doing some of these videos, when the feature first came out, we were writing some of the articles about this, right? In my head, it's like, oh, okay, just like when I have my laptop and there's something that I can't quite figure out, at some point in time, the IT person says, all right, hold on a second. They remote UI into my computer. They're kind of helping me to kind of click around some things. And that is one use case that we're kind of showing here. But a couple other interesting use cases with remote UI are one of the following. So Rallyboard 65, we just introduced it, and we've talked about how simple it is to set up and deploy a Rallyboard 65. So imagine this. We've got an offsite installation team. They simply maybe VESA mounted to the wall. they connect it to Ethernet, they connect it to power, and they just provision it to sync. Now, what that means is that after that point, my IT team can still finish the provisioning process remotely. So Dennis and I, maybe we need another day or another couple days to make sure that we have all of our licenses ordered and in order, and all the names are correct. Again, once the device has been provisioned to sync, we can just remote UI, and like you're seeing here, finish the provisioning process on all those installed rooms. And so again, it really kind of facilitates and adds an extra option there when it comes to installation. And then the second one that I want to talk about, Dennis, because I know that you have customers where they've talked to you about this too, is what I call white glove service. So when you have those executives who they're like, I don't even want to turn the meeting on because I might mess it up. Like, I just want it to be running by the time I walk into the room. How is remote UI helpful with that?
Exactly. And a couple of my customers, those rooms have really thick, plush, nice carpets. So, instead of the executive having to figure out, how to press the button or mute, you could have someone in the room or outside the room controlling the meeting for them. And the nice part, like I said, what I just did, start the meeting, change the camera layout, and be there as their white glove service without technically being in the room if needed. So good call out.
So a lot of really cool options. And Dennis mentioned this before, but we've also paid special, I mean, this is just an important call out, paid special attention to security, right? So remote UI access is done through local network access, number one. Number two, there's a chime that sounds like this, bum, 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 or something like that, when the room goes into remote UI, you see the red bars around the tap and the display, not just for us on the remote end, but the user that's in the room. And although I don't want to press this right now because it'll lock us out, but there's also a stop button that's right there on the top next to the remote UI in progress in case the user wants to stop the session as well. Okay, let's exit out of this, and I want to talk about update channels next, Dennis. So let's close this out. Let's go ahead and look at our update channels. There we are. So what are we looking at here? Starting on the left side.
Perfect. So by default, Sync comes with 3 update channels. A production channel, which is running the latest CollabOS version. So it'll tell you any devices in here, if there's the newest CollabOS version, what it is, and help you update to that. The second area is the beta tag. And the nice part about that, while your SEs are happy to help you get beta software and all like that, maybe there's a new feature coming out, anything like that. As a Sync user, you can enroll a couple devices into this beta area, and you're going to see software a few weeks before it's released. Nice part about that, you can test it in your environment, test in lab, help us with feedback, and it's self-service. You don't have to have your SE do certain things for you. So I find that really useful. And the third out of the box is our production teams. So this is what Microsoft considers certified CollabOS releases for your Teams Room devices. Show you that instead of just talking about it. And this is keeping you up to date with what Microsoft has certified. But there's also some other ones. You've got, if you know my friend Jay, he's got a channel on here. And you may use these channels for certain things, like say those white glove executive rooms. We don't even want those to upgrade to the newest release version. Maybe we want to keep those in a separate area and keep those maybe a release behind or something like that. So different areas you can do using these different channels.
So again, I think name of the game is flexibility. I'm not going to repeat anything Dennis said, right? But the idea is that with customized channels, plus some three really cool out of the box channels, I think it gives teams a lot of different options to work with. Okay, Dennis, interest of time, we want to make sure we finish before like 4 p.m. today. So anything else on devices that we want to talk about before we move on?
No, I think we've hit most of it.
So for folks here, we kind of only scratched the surface really of every single thing that's in devices. There's a lot of articles about this on Product Hub, which we're also going to talk about today too. We encourage you to check that out. A lot of good videos. Also talk to your SE friends about exactly how this kind of works in your function. But a lot of really cool stuff. But because there's so much stuff, we got to move on to the next thing. So with that, I am going to share again. And we're going to talk about Spaces. Now, here with Spaces, The important note is that we've had a previous Talk Techie to Me session with Reed Allen, and I believe Pike was on that session too, right, Dennis? Where we talked all about spaces. So I'm not going to spend even 4 or 5 minutes talking about this. I'm just going to do a quick review that is 30 seconds. But we did feel that it was important to mention this because this is part of the Sync story. So the ability to book desks and rooms with Logitech Desk and Room Booking, you have the ability to set that up with Sync. Now, note that room booking comes with Essential and Select. There have been some questions about remote UI. I'm sure that will come up with booking too. We're happy to answer these questions there at the end, but this is a feature, especially room booking, that is with one of our service licenses. Once you set that up, users also have the ability through their Tune app, also on the Tab Scheduler, also with Logitech View to be able to view those maps and to be able to navigate around. Third, we also have the device story as well. So once somebody does book the desk, when somebody does book the room, that's really where Tab Scheduler and our Logitech Flex come into play, where you can see your name, you can see if the desk is available, in use, etc. And just in terms of stuff that's new, again, I know Reed covered this, but I think this stuff is so cool that it is worth a call out, is that we introduced a concept called Workspace automation. Now, the special part about this story is that this is not just unique to Logitech room booking. This is really something that is with all service providers, just like you're seeing right here on this GIF. So the concept of auto book and release is that when I walk into a meeting space and I have not ad hoc booked it, or I did not reserve it beforehand, I can actually create an automatic booking just because my presence has been detected in the room. Same thing with auto release. If Dennis and I are meeting, but we leave our meeting 15 minutes early, the room will actually release early. And the point of this is that we're trying to give more accurate depictions of what is actually available and what is in use around your office. Now, with Logitech View, which is a roommate connected to a touchscreen display, we have the option to also show a map of the office, and together with a feature like auto book and release, again, the rooms that are showing available and busy are going to be a lot more accurate because auto book and release, those policies that we're setting, and those policies can be set through Sync. That's going to allow us to, again, make sure that rooms are booked and released depending on how they're actually being used. And like I said before, the call out here is that because what Logitech is doing is actually creating and deleting and creating and deleting calendar bookings, it's available with all service providers. So it's not just a feature that's for Logitech room booking. This is something that can be used with Teams. This can be something that can be used with Zoom. So important call out there. We're not going to do a live demo with that because, again, we encourage you to watch the 1-hour Talk Techie to Me session that happened with Reed and Pike. But one that we will talk about before we do a live demo is insights. So to better understand how your desks and spaces and rooms are being used, and it can get very, very granular, which is what's super cool about this, we have insights. So what's different about Logitech's insights, and I saw this question earlier, if I'm using Teams or my pro management portal, should I also use Sync at the same time? The answer is yes, and Insights is a perfect example of that. Whereas we can get information about, say, call quality, meeting length, etc. What Insights is going to help us with is to understand our actual room and device usage. So as we think about resourcing, as we think about decisions, and even Logitech, we recently moved, well, maybe not recently anymore, but we moved offices over the last couple of years. And to help us make decisions about how many meeting rooms we needed and what should be the size of those meeting rooms, this information was super helpful for us because it gave us actual employee data. Now, we can view it in aggregate. Dennis is going to show an example here of where we're actually going to look at a specific room. And in addition to that, you can also export this information. And that's actually something we did at Logitech, is we took the information from Insights, we combined it with our insights from some of our other tools, and it really gave us this holistic view of how our office space was being used. Okay, so now what's new? One of the coolest things that is coming to Sync that we actually do have a live demo of today is health insights. So with Logitech Spot, as well as the environmental sensors that have been built into Rallyboard 65, we now can get information about, I think, 6 different measures, right? Dennis, I think it's like CO2, temperature, VOC. There's a bunch of different things that are part of the environmental information that's being given. You can see it in aggregate. We're going to be able to see it by room, just like with occupancy. And you're also going to be able to get recommendations at the top. So enough of me talking. Dennis, let's take a look at some of this stuff live.
Okay, So, we'll start with the traditional parts. And like Craig said, this is showing counting of people in the rooms. So you can set your rooms on average seat levels. And that, based on your seat count, you can say if you know, there's more people in the room, it's underutilized, et cetera, like that. So we're looking at this from a large screen. I could go down and look at certain ones. But with this view, let's go and dig down to a room and we'll look at a day's usage in there. So I'm going to go and find a room here. And this happened to be at a event we had 2 weeks ago. So at the top, I can see, meetings with video, meetings without. So we're going to see purple is the meetings when video's happening and folks in the room. And then gray is when people are in the room, but they're not in an active video call. So they're using the room, for huddle purposes, maybe sharing content, etc. We can see average duration in the rooms, average usage, but then now we can really look at how the room's being used. So Craig, looking at this, I think we can kind of figure out, what times the room is really being used for video and maybe what time folks were just in the room, etc.
That's what I love about this, right? Is that it's just so clear to me. It's very clear that, I mean, this is a 1 day event, but it's very clear
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This room was not used at all because we only did Logiwork Minneapolis on 1 day. But for that day, it matches exactly, and Kristen can speak to this because she's the one who coordinated the whole event, but it matches exactly how we were using it that day too. So like Dennis said, the gray is saying, okay, this is when the room was being used without the video conference device in use for that day. But we can also see the morning time, generally light usage. And then right when the event was happening, pretty heavy usage because we're going from a light purple to a darker purple, right? But it's just very clear to see that just from almost just a quick 2-second at a glance, exactly how this room was used. Now, one of the other callouts that we'll make is that sometimes, and this is really interesting information, and when I talked to Trevor about this, we actually had a few examples from Logitech, is we would go into a few rooms and we would only see gray and maybe a few purple bars here and there. It was very clear that one of two things was happening. Either one, people just didn't see that room as a video conference room. They just saw it more as just a quick kind of on-site focus space. Or the more likely example, there was somebody or two people who were camping out in that room and was considering it their own personal office, right? But as an IT person, as a workplace person, it allows you to have that information to, again, help you make decisions about your space. Dennis, let's look at health insights, unless there's anything else we want to call out about occupancy.
No, let me go back to the high level. And as Craig said, this is a new feature and lots more to come on this. But now I'm looking at the health of, in this case, it's rally boards around the room. Luckily we see a lot of greens and all. So we see, average health score, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into there. But let's, instead of looking at the ones that are saying good, let's figure out why this one's a 78%, where all the other ones are really high. So I can click on this, and not to pick on our friends in Stockholm, but let's see what's going on in this room. So maybe we'll look at the data first, and then we'll come back up to the other part. So much like the purples and grays, we can see what's going on all the time in this room. So green means most of our counters are within recommended levels. But then for some reason here in the orange, now we're starting to see, red levels and all like that. You can also click on a full data view of these rooms, and look at different things. So there's something going on in this red peak down here on the VOC index. Now, I call myself a technical person, but I don't know what the VOC index really means. So the nice part, I can come up here and click on information, and it explains to me what the level should be, what I'm looking for, and all like that. And these are a couple of the things we're collecting.
Dennis, let's scroll up. Now, before we call out this one here, one of the things that sometimes I personally find difficult when it comes to analytics and data is that I'm seeing the information. I know that I'm supposed to come to some conclusion, but sometimes it's hard for me to get to that conclusion. What I love about Sync and what we're doing with Health Insights is that we're providing not just what the information is, and so you can make your own decision, but if we look at the recommendations, Dennis, let's talk about what we're seeing there. We're not just saying like, hey, we recommend that you lower the CO2. Or we like this number's high, you should change it. There's specific recommendations there that are intuitive to me as a user. So tell me about that.
Yeah, it's saying the temperature is too high and the air is too dry. So some recommended actions are put some more plants in the room, maybe install a humidification system. And this information you can feed back to your facility teams, different areas.
Dennis, anything else? Again, interest of time because we have one more section to cover and we're already at 10:40. Any other thing about insights that we want to cover here?
I think it's also cool. It calls out and recommends, okay, for this room, maybe this room is better suited for four seats in the room versus maybe we're trying to cram this into a 12-person room or something like that. So it again brings a lot of this details. The other part that's been talked about, all this information can be exported out and put into different tool sets.
Okay. Anything else before we switch back over?
No, I think I'll hand it back over to you, Craig.
All right. Okay. Last and final section, we're going to cram two things together so we can make sure to do everything within the time that we have. Is I want to talk about support and services and how those have made their way over to Sync. And then we always talk about Product Hub because it's super cool. And we're going to talk about Product Hub as well today too. Okay, so support and services. Most folks here probably familiar with services. I'm going to do a quick review. We have everything from basic all the way through select. When we talk about essential, which is tier 1, which is great about essential is you're getting a lot of those advanced software-based service features. So we talked about some of them earlier, remote UI access. Room booking is also part of our essential package. Insights is also part of our essential package as well. And then we have a more robust comprehensive package called Select, where you're getting everything from extended warranty to advanced RMA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I'm sure most folks are familiar with this. But what is new? What is new? We have had a big project that we've been working on for some time. We have made a big deal out of it because it is a big deal. The first part of this is that we now have the ability to do license management on your contracts through Sync. So before, you used to have to do that through a separate portal, Select portal. But now, directly within Sync, you have the ability to view your contracts. We're going to take a look at that in a second. You can even rename them, and you can assign the licensing directly in Sync. Another thing that's new is that support ticketing was originally done through two platforms, either the Pro Support portal or it was also done through Select, which we just talked about a second ago. Now that's also coming into Sync as well. So the ability to manage support tickets directly from Sync is part of a troubleshooting step. So let's imagine we said, okay, we have room logs, remote UI access. I still don't know what's wrong. I'm going to open up a support ticket, all of that under one hood. We're going to show and talk about that in a second. And then what we're going to show after that is we're going to talk about Product Hub. So in the last section here, folks are familiar with Product Hub. It lives within Sync. What you're probably familiar with is that we've had articles there for some time, which is great. Talks about all the newest features, devices, new portfolio add-ons. We've also brought in guides and support into Product Hub as well, which have been super helpful so that you can just get information on a self-service basis directly from Sync. But there's some new stuff that also came to Product Hub, some of it within the last 2 weeks. First, we added a wish list. We've been talking about this a lot. Our product managers are actually reading this wish list very regularly. And so what we want folks to do is be able to talk about, this is something that I would love to have. You can upvote that. And again, it really helps us to make determinations on what features we're prioritizing based on your feedback. Next, this is the one that I think we added like 3 weeks ago. We've also added events. So Robert was mentioning this earlier. We're actually getting people to attend Talk Techie to me from all over the globe now because we've been able to add events to Product Hub. And then finally, very recently, so this section is going to be very slim when Dennis and I demonstrate this right now, but we just added discussions. Again, another one about 2 weeks ago because we want people to be able to discuss and talk about things with each other. Okay, Dennis. Over to you. Let's take a look at what we just saw directly in Sync.
Okay, so if you notice down here, we've got two different areas. I'm going to hit in contracts first. So instead of having to go to that Select portal and look at my contracts, I'm able to see different contracts. I've got certain ones for enterprise devices, desk, medium rooms, etc. Now, these contract numbers and names, um, you know, maybe that's how you read them and know that. But for folks like me, we may need to say this for your North American devices. So I could go up and edit this contract and put North America in there. So it would have the contract number, but also a name. And that's kind of what I did here on the Sync Plus one. Added that in. So I'll show you here in a second how you could do that. And also some of the other things I can tell from these contracts. So now I click in. At one point, I can go and easily edit right here. I'm not going to do that on this one to keep our tenant straight, but I can also see it's active, how many devices I have, and how many I still have available, which is good because you're always kind of wondering, okay, do I have enough select licenses? Do I need to get more, etc.
Now, a quick note here is that you also have the ability to assign rooms to licenses in the SE tenant, right, Dennis? I think all those rooms are automatically licensed, right, and assigned. So we're not going to be able to demo that part live, right? But it is an important call that you have the ability to do that through Sync now. That was really one of the first updates. But maybe we can look at the support side. So let's maybe take a look at one of our rooms and let's open up a ticket.
Okay, perfect. And so let's go back to our troublesome Palmetto room here. Now, luckily, we've connected that mic back and everything came back. But say it didn't. I could easily click on now the support tab from within the room. And when I click on here, it gives me the ability to help self-diagnose some. So we're going to show the hub a little bit later, but I could click on the support page and take me right to that Rally Bar Mini. I could see some FAQs. I could see how to deploy, some known issues, all like that from right here. So maybe that saves me from opening a ticket. But at the end of the day, you know, we've plugged everything back in, still not working. Let's go and get that ticket open. So I click on products in the room. Nice part. It tells you they're already there. Click on the Rally Bar Mini. Is this in sync? All this is pre-populated. So God love our other ticketing system. I would have had to be filling all this stuff in. See what space it is. Serial numbers right there. I didn't have to go and cut and paste. Continue. I'm going to say this is a troubleshooting. This is impacting just one unit. And now I can start adding in for the sake and for our troubleshooting team to not have to worry about this ticket. I'm just going to say this is an NSYNC demo and then add some more details. Mic unresponsive. There. Well, Dennis can't type is the other thing. And add some troubleshooting tickets. Plugged and unplugged. So as you're seeing, I'm able to put all this in, and this is going to go straight to our support team. Add attachments, etc. Now we've also added the ability to tell it's on Android, it's running Teams, and how to contact me. So I get through this, I can go and I could go back, say I put something in I want to edit. I see all this before I submit the ticket. Well, let's go ahead and throw it out there. So as this is going, it's going to go ahead and create the ticket, and you'll be able to get correspondence pretty quick on this, depending on your service level like that. So now you see different tickets in here. This is for this room. If I go out to our larger tab, I can see all the tickets open, read information, open, closed, etc. on that.
So
What do you think, Craig?
I mean, the reason why this is invaluable to folks, right, is, and I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but I always like talking through this troubleshooting process that we want and that we've really streamlined for administrators, right? So we talked about inventory first, and there's a reason why we did that review, is that you see the dots. Dennis then said, okay, this room, Palmetto, seems to have a problem. I click into it. I then get a room log, and maybe that alone, which is what the problem was, oh, mic pod is disconnected. I plugged it back in. I was able to solve my issue. But if not, I've also got remote UI where I can go into the device and take a look at what's happening. If that doesn't solve my problem, we've also got links here to our support pages where we can ask a question. We're going to show that in a second, right? But we can begin to self-diagnose and self-service. And then if all else fails, then we can open up a ticket. And again, we're doing that all within the platform, all within the room. So it's this process from looking at a bird's eye view all the way down to now I'm in communication with Logitech to help answer my question. And it's all within sync. That is really the beauty and the power of the system that we're providing. It's not just flexible, but all the way down to communication with us. It's all provided under one roof. Okay, anything else about service licensing or support tickets here before we take a look at Product Hub in the next, I'm going to do it in 3 minutes so we have at least 5 minutes to answer questions.
I think the last thing is, yes, these rooms have a select license, but even if they had a basic license, you can still open a ticket from this area. So it's not just for our select customers. And I got to get to the Product Hub. This is Craig's baby. So we'll go ahead and click on over.
Like literally born and raised from birth. It's I would say it's still in its kind of like it's pre-teen years right now because there's so much stuff that's being added. So let's talk from the top. When you come in from the homepage, you're going to see important announcements at the top. You're going to see our latest articles. So the cool part about Product Hub is that you're always going to be kept up to date on latest devices, CollabOS releases, sync updates, etc. If we click articles, I've organized the articles here by teams first, because there's so many Teams users, Zoom, and then again, there's everything else underneath with additional tabs. So whether you want CollabOS updates, articles, announcements, end of sale notices, they're all there in that last section. If we go back up to the top, events is the new piece that we've added. So the cool part is we're working with all of our teams around the globe to add all of our events to this page. You can also click to find the registration pages as well as the information about the sessions. So even this talk, well, it's not on there anymore because I guess it's currently in the session, but the Talk Techie to Me about sync session was just on there when we were doing our practice session for this earlier. Let's take a look at discussions next. In discussions here on the left, if we click general, again, it's a little meager right now because we've just added this, but we want to really facilitate people having discussions with themselves. And so that's a feature that we've added here to sync. But wish list is right next to that. And you can see here that people are adding things that they want. They can also upvote those. And again, our product managers, our product management team is reading this and it's helping to inform their decision-making about features. We're not going to click, sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I'll interrupt Craig. On the wish list, customers are always coming to me, hey, can you add this to a feature request? I like that. Again, happy to do that for you, but it means more coming from our customers. And Craig isn't lying. If you click on this, you'll see Trevor's commenting in there, Henry's commenting in there. All of our product managers are looking at this. So highly recommend our customers use this.
Okay, we're going to skip the team workspaces devices and personal workspace devices because those have been there for the last couple of years. But I do want to click on support, right? So when we click support, yes, we talked about how all of those different guides, support articles have now come into Product Hub within Sync. But something that Dennis and I love is what we call instant answers. And so what instant answers is doing is it's aggregating all the information that we have within Product Hub. And as we ask it a question, so let's ask it this question, it's pulling that information and giving us a quick answer based on what it's reading. So it's just saving us time in terms of having to search and find the exact right article. So we asked, how many mics can Raspberry Mini support? Pulled information from what we have in Product Hub. It's also linking additional articles here. Dennis, any other call outs that we want to make about instant answers?
No, basically the SEs, every time we get a question, we run it through instant answers to make sure everything's correct. It's really good. And the nice part, I can copy this and respond right back to the customer without having to write it myself. So it makes me more efficient. But what would make me even more efficient if my customers went right to this? So it's all good.
Okay, let's stop our share. Robert, if you're online, maybe I think we wanted to do some Q&A here. I think we had 51. I went 1 minute over, so I think we probably have about 5 minutes here. We can do some rapid fire Q&A.
You guys did quite good, and the SEs did a pretty good job at keeping up with the Q&A throughout the duration of the call. But there are a few questions that have not gone answered yet, and so I'll throw you guys some softballs and maybe some hard balls. But so one question did come through for let me just see here. For workspace automation, a use case we see is that we have a company-wide hackathons, and finding an ad hoc space to meet in during the event can be quite difficult. Ideally, this person envisions a view portal displayed on a large screen to identify what rooms are and are not in use. We do that, right? You guys touched on it briefly, and hopefully we were able to answer that question. We do have our Logi booking software platform that you can take and push onto large displays. I was in our Cork, Ireland office last week and was scrambling to find a conference room, and found that on each of our floors we have one of those big screens. I was able to find really quickly and book a room and head off to it and be able to take that spot. So it was quite convenient for me, and hopefully we answered your question there.
You know, Robert, one thing that I know this is a review, but I think it's worth it to show. Dennis, can we just show the auto book and release settings on Sync here in the live demo too? I think this helps round out that answer. So in the case of that hackathon, for folks who are watching, you have the ability to do the auto book and release settings within Sync. So for example, if you want the auto book to book for an hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, you can actually do that setting within Sync. Same thing with auto release. Same thing with ghost meetings or recurring meetings. You can actually do that within Sync as well. But it's an important call out because you as the administrator have the ability to set those policies. So we're seeing it here. We're saying, okay, are we allowing ad hoc bookings? Okay, let's see. There it is. Auto book a little bit down below. So we've turned auto book on. We're booking it after 1 minute, but if we click that drop down, let's see what some of those options are there. Right, so we can book it after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And how long are we booking it for? Is that booking for 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours? Again, those settings you can put in as an administrator. And so in that particular case, you might even change the settings for that day and then maybe change them back to default settings after. But that may help in those scenarios just so that the rooms are most accurately depicted in terms of availability at that moment. All right, back to you,
And
Robert.
Craig, if
Sorry,
you noticed, I was only making those changes for my South Carolina office instead of making this globally. So to your point, that office during that hackathon, you could change those settings.
Perfect. Well, I'll tell you what, with the last 5 minutes, I'm going to hand it back over to Kristen to kind of take us on the outward bound thank you aspects of the call. And once again, guys, thank you so much for running through this. Hopefully we got to all of your questions in the Q&A. And what I'll